You're eating plant-based, working out, and doing all the right things. So why are you still gaining unwanted fat and not putting on lean muscle mass as a vegan? I used to think long time ago that as long as I ate plant-based foods, I'm going to be absolutely fine. I was raised vegetarian and I've been vegan for the last 6 years. I struggled almost my entire life to put on lean muscle mass and improve my overall body composition. I was skinny fat, I had low muscle tone and a very high body fat percentage. So after years of struggling to put on lean muscle mass as a vegetarian and then as a vegan, I realized that not all plant-based protein is created equally. If you want to build muscle, increase strength, and improve your overall body composition as a vegan, then you need to know which plant-based foods are going to fuel your progress and which plant-based foods might be slowing you down. What I'm covering here today, it overlaps with my previous video that I did on vegan protein sources, which got over 50,000 views and it has helped thousands of vegans. I highly encourage you to go ahead and watch that video next. I will link that video in the description box below. I wanted to create this video separately because I find that there's still a lot of confusion as to how you can optimize your overall macros as a vegan. I am going to break down how vegan protein sources fall into 3 different categories. We are going to go over each of these categories one by one and compare vegan protein to calories, fat, and carbohydrate ratio. And then at the end of this video, I am going to show you 3 different plating methods that you can use to optimize your vegan nutrition to meet your specific goals. Before we get into all the details, let's take this time real quick to understand what makes a good lean protein source. A lean protein source is usually defined by 10:1 protein ratio rule. This simple guideline helps you determine whether a food is a good lean plant-based protein source. How this works is that for every 10 calories that you eat, the food should give you at least 1 gram of protein per 10 calories. So for example, a food with 100 calories and 10 grams of protein will meet this criteria. You're going to take 100 calories and divide it by 10 grams of protein, and that's going to give you 10 calories per gram. So this rule makes it easy to identify that it's a high quality lean protein source, so you can make smarter food choices on a vegan diet. So the first category is where we're going to identify what are some of the sources of vegan protein that also contains some carbohydrate. Please keep in mind in all of these examples that I will be showing here today, I am going to compare how many grams of protein, carbs, and fat is there per 100 calories. I'm only going to give few examples. These categories are really broad. We don't have enough time to cover all those beans and lentils and legumes in this category, so I'm going to pick and choose few of them just to prove my point. The first carb protein source is red lentils. For every 100 calories in cooked red lentils, you are getting about 7.8 grams of protein, and your carbohydrate is 17.3 grams and fat is 0.3. The protein is in blue, carbs is in orange, and fat is in green. If you are eating 100 calories from red lentils, you are mostly eating carbohydrate and only about 7.8 grams of protein. Second in the list is legume-based pastas. So this can be your red lentil pasta or chickpea pasta. For every 100 calories, you are getting 6.6 grams of protein, but majority of your calories are coming from carbs. You're getting about 17.4 grams of carbs. Third example, let's look at black beans. For every 100 calories of cooked black beans, you are getting 5.9 grams of protein and 18.6 grams of carbohydrate. Now let's look at chickpeas. For every 100 calories, you are only getting 5.4 grams of protein, 16.7 grams of carbohydrate. And lastly, let's talk about quinoa, because everybody thinks quinoa is a great plant-based protein source. Quinoa is mostly carbohydrate. For every 100 calories, you're only getting 3.8 grams of protein and 17.5 grams of carbohydrate. So as you can see, quinoa is not a plant-based protein source. It is mostly carbohydrates, so you are getting some benefit of protein in this carbohydrate. So now let's go over our second category. In this category, we are getting mostly protein, but it also has some fat in it as well. One of the examples is extra firm tofu. For every 100 calories, you are getting 10.8 grams of protein, 2.3 grams of carbohydrate, and 6.2 grams of fat. So at the end of this video, I am going to explain how you can tweak your macros if you are including extra firm tofu or tofu in your meal as a primary plant-based protein source. Let's look at tempeh. Tempeh is very similar to tofu. For every 100 calories, you are getting 10.6 grams of protein and 5.6 grams of fat and a little bit of carbs in there as well. Let's look at soy milk next. For soy milk, every 100 calories, you're getting 10 grams of protein and 5 grams of fat. For Butler soy curls, you are getting 9.2 grams of protein with 6.7 grams of carbs and 4.2 grams of fat. Edamame next. For every 100 calories, you're getting 8.8 grams of protein, 7.8 grams of carbs, and 4.5 grams of fat. Let's talk about hemp seeds next. Many people think hemp seeds is a great plant-based protein source. It is not. It is mostly fat with some protein in it. 8.8 grams of fat for every 100 calories and only 5.7 grams of protein. Lastly, just to wrap things up real quick under this category, I wanted to show you examples of peanut butter, chia seeds, and cashew. Please keep in mind for peanut butter, you can put any other nut butter in this category as well. And as you can clearly see, most of these three things that we have on the screen, they are mostly fat source instead of protein source, and they also contain some carbohydrate. So please keep that in mind when you add these ingredients to your meals. Lastly, let's look at our third category, and this is our lean plant-based protein sources. First plant-based protein source in this category is my absolute favorite is fava bean tofu. You are getting 0 grams of carbs, 0 grams of fat, and 22.8 grams of protein for every 100 calories. So this is an amazing lean plant-based protein source. If you have access to fava bean tofu and you're allergic to soy, this is a great alternative, and it's going to help you increase your overall protein intake as a vegan without going up in fat or carbs. Second one in this category is seitan. For every 100 calories, you are getting 20 grams of protein, 3.3 grams of carbs, and 1.1 grams of fat. Next in the list is protein powder. I know everybody thinks protein powder is processed, it's not whole foods, but guys, there's a difference between eating processed chips, cookies, and crackers than protein powder. Yes, it's processed, but again, you have to look at the nutritional value. And sometimes when you're on the go and you're struggling to get all those calories in, if you are a petite woman, protein powders really come in handy, and they help you meet your protein targets without eating tons of food or without going up in calories. I personally love adding protein powder to my oatmeal every morning if I'm eating an oatmeal, or sometimes to my smoothies. This protein powder category is going to vary from brand to brand. For every 100 calories, you're going to get 18.5 grams of protein, 2.3 grams of carbs, and 1.9 grams of fat. Then in the list, we have textured vegetable protein. For every 100 calories, you're going to get 14.5 grams of protein, only 10 grams of carbs, and 0 grams of fat. Next in the list, we have nutritional yeast. For every 100 calories, you're getting 13.3 grams of protein, 10 grams of carbs and 0 grams of fat. You can easily sprinkle in nutritional yeast in your sauces or on top of your pasta dishes or on top of your salads to boost up your overall protein intake. Next in the list is lupini beans. This is the only beans that fall under this categories because lupini beans are a lot more higher in protein and a lot less in carbohydrate compared to any other beans and legumes. Next in the list we have is powdered peanut butter. It's my absolute favorite. For every 100 calories, you're getting 10 grams of protein, 8.3 grams of carbs, and only 2.5 grams of fat. Lastly, in this category, I'm going to include some vegan faux meats. I know they're processed, but sometimes when you're on the go and you have no choice, and if you're not prepared, some of these faux meats do come in handy. Every 100 calories, you're going to get 10 grams of protein, 5.4 grams of carbs, and only 4.2 grams of fat. So now that you understand that plant-based protein is comprised of these 3 different categories, you are in a better position now to make a very well-educated tweaks on your vegan nutrition. So to demonstrate all these vegan protein sources that I went over, let's build our 3 different plating methods from each of these 3 categories to understand how all of these calories, when they are put together in our plate, how they impact our overall calories and different macros. The first plating method that you're seeing on the screen comes from our first category, which is carbs protein category. I have added 200 grams of black beans, 200 grams of white rice, and then we added some broccoli in there as well, and a bit of avocado because none of these protein sources contain that much fat. And then I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of this low-calorie teriyaki sauce. So if you were to eat this meal, you are getting approximately 700 calories from this meal with 25.8 grams of protein, 125.4 grams of carb, and 10.9 grams of fat. So overall, in terms of calorie, this is not a bad plate. 700 calories in a meal is not a lot. But if you are a petite woman, like 5'4" or under, and you are trying to lose your body fat, 700 calories per meal is a lot of calories. And on top of that, let's just make an assumption you're trying to at least hit 100 grams of protein, and you are going to be way over your calories and you're going to be way less with your protein targets. It's a great plating method that might work for some individuals that are much taller and have a lot more weight to lose, or they are male, or they have more muscle mass. But this type of macro will not work for women that are much smaller and that have lower calorie requirements. So now let's look at our plating method that's coming from protein sources that contain some fat as well. So as you can see on the screen, I've added about 120 grams of extra firm tofu on this plate. I'm going to reduce my black beans to 50 grams. And then I've also added some quinoa in there for variety, kept my broccoli in there, and I also kept the same sauce that we had in our previous example. So now with this plating method, you are going to get 450 calories, let's say, just to even out the numbers, and 31.6 grams of protein, only 51.2 grams of carbs, and 15 grams of fat. I did not add an additional fat source in here because I know that tofu also contains some fat in this meal. This is just an example. You can tweak this according to your macros. If you think that you need a lot more fat in this meal, feel free to add avocado in here. It's going to increase your calories for this meal, but it's also going to increase your fat. Now, let's just say you're pretty happy with this macros, except you want to reduce your carbs even more. You can either eliminate black beans or quinoa, or you can keep both of those in, but you can reduce the quantity down. Lastly, this is my favorite plating method. This is how I have been eating for the last 3 years and getting some great results at the gym in terms of strength and in terms terms of increasing some muscle mass. I have 120 grams of lean protein that's coming from seitan. I added about 50 grams of black beans as my carb source. Then I also added about 100 grams of quinoa as my carb source. Then I kept my broccoli and my sauce the same as previous examples. So as you can see, the overall calories of this meal is much lower compared to the previous two examples. Here we only have 393 calories in this meal, and your protein is a lot more higher. It's 37.2 grams of protein, and carbs is the same because I kept quinoa and black beans the same. If you wanted, you can reduce the quantity of these carbs, and then my fat is pretty low. If I want to increase the overall calories of this meal, now I have the freedom of either adding more fat into this meal, or I can even add more carbs into this meal, whether that carb is coming from beans or it's actually coming from potatoes or rice. This is the beauty of understanding how your vegan protein sources fall into these three categories. And I only learned this when I started to track my food into Chronometer app. I logged my meals, and that's how I was able to identify that I was eating way more carbohydrate and I was getting way less protein in my meals. And no wonder I was not seeing any improvements in terms of strength or improving my muscle mass. I wish someone had given me this knowledge 5 years ago on my fitness journey, and I wouldn't have made all those mistakes that I made. I really hope this video has helped you understand vegan protein sources better, and you are now in a better position to make more educated tweaks with your vegan macros. If you want to build muscle, lose fat, improve your strength and longevity, it's not just about eating plants. It's about eating the right balance of calories, protein, carbs, and fat. Let me know in the comments if you found value out of today's video and which plating method did you find most interesting. Don't forget to share this video with other vegans who are trying to optimize their overall protein intake or to just simply improve their overall body composition and health. And remember, I offer online nutrition and fitness coaching, workout plans, and meal plans. They are all available on my website at mrsslimonplants.com. I will leave all those links in the description box below. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys very soon on my next one. Bye.